time.
Welcome to Sunrise. This is Koshi here. No, it is the bloody Set of Six podcast with Clarkey and Ozza. Clarkey, how are you, champion?
I'm not even going to respond to that, given what just occurred off camera. Very, very well, thanks, Oz. I'm thrilled to be here for 6 fresh tackles on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. So let's hit it up.
Oh, it is bloody beautiful indeed. We start off with tackle 1. Yes, Origin talk. And it is, round 5 this week? Yes. We love our state of origin, but Freddie Fittler has come out this week and has named 3 men who could possibly replace Tom Trbojevic in Origin Game 1 on the wing for New South Wales. So we start off with Blake Ferguson, who, I've got some notes here, has made 220 average run meters this year,
Wow.
and 15 tackle breaks, which is obviously he is a very good attacking winger, and that stat just backs it up there. We've also got Campbell Graham, who has averaged over 100 less, so 119.2 average run meters this year, 14 tackle breaks and 5 tries, which we must emphasise here that he's tied first with Corey Oates of the Brisbane Broncos. Then we've also got Nick Cotric, current 18th man for the Blues, 99.6 average run meters and 14 tackle breaks. Personally, for me, look, I think that Freddie would go with Nick Cotric, obviously because he's within his New South Wales system, obviously selecting him as 18th man last year. I believe it was for all 3 games, was it? He was 18th man?
Yeah, I believe he was there for the entire series. It was him and Tarek Sims who were their reserves.
Yeah, well, personally for me, although Fergie has been good, I'm going with Campbell Graham just because he has looked really well as he was playing. I've not really seen Campbell Graham out of form yet. Obviously, this is his 2nd season in the NRL, and the key thing that stands out for me are those 5 tries. 5 tries in 4 games. The main thing that you want to be doing as a winger is scoring tries. That's the end goal for me personally. That's how I see it as a winger.
Okay.
Your emphasis is obviously not on defense. You're not exactly seen as a player who should be making a lot of meters before getting tackled. For me, a winger, they should really be just finishing plays, as in scoring tries, which I used to be a winger, and I did not do that whatsoever. I was probably the worst winger you could ever see. And that's not, a plot on wingers or whatever. Wingers can obviously do a variety of things, but I think their main goal is to score tries. That's what Campbell Graham's been doing so far this year. So at the moment, for me, who's the front runner? Out of those 3, who have you got?
Well, I absolutely agree with you. The primary function of a winger is to finish off your sets, etc., and racking up the tries. But I would argue the second most biggest thing for a winger in State of Origin is actually coming in for that early hit-up. Because we don't see stop-start footy. We don't see kickers angling for the sideline. It's fast-paced action, and your forwards realistically do require a larger body coming in and having that early hit-up, which Campbell Graham doesn't necessarily offer a team. I think that's pretty well shown by his run meters being 100 less than Fergo. I'll give you my pick in a moment, but before I do, I'll go over all 3 options a little bit more in depth. As you touched, Ferguson, for me, there's no doubt he is the form winger of the competition, and he probably was last year as well. He's just, in some way, he is underrated. I don't think people appreciate how much body of work he is actually getting through. He led the NRL in runs, post-contact meters, and most meters in 2018. That's very impressive. Post-contact meters, Oz. You would think that would belong to a front row forward or a Tamalolo, but no, it belonged to a winger, which is just absolutely crazy. In saying that, I won't go with Fergo. I think he's had his time. He never got to win an Origin series, and he was up against the greatest Queensland team of all time. But if I'm Freddie Fittler, I'm just sort of thinking, look, last year I've brought in all these young guns. The tide is finally in our favour. I'm not going to look back and bring in people that, weren't able to, get the job done in previous years. So then we go to our young gun options here. We've got Nick Cotric and Campbell Graham. Well, I understand the fact of 5 tries is pretty impressive in 4 games, but it is still very early in the season. I think there's still about 7 or 8 rounds until Origin. I think that'll level out a little bit more so then. I'm really intrigued by Nick Cotric. The 14 tackle breaks, to me, That's only in 4 games as well. That shows that he's always dangerous. And when we're talking about a dangerous winger in Origin, we want someone that's able to come in and have the early hit up. And I understand by me saying that, you would think, okay, well, you're leaning more towards Ferguson, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because he's had his chance, whereas Nick Kotrick, as you said, was the 18th man last year. He's been in this Origin system with Freddie Fittler as the coach. He understands the now winning culture that they're looking to build. Whereas Ferguson might still be stuck in that old sort of culture where we know they used to get on the drinks, etc., etc. Graham has 10 less tackle breaks, I believe. He's only on about 4. So for that reason, I am more leaning towards Kotrick. But Graham certainly took me by surprise. And, he's a true smoky. I don't think anyone would have expected his name to be thrown in the mix. But if there's one thing Freddie taught us last year when selecting that side, Oz, what do you think it was? For you?
Ooh, for me?
The one thing you can take out of that blue side.
One thing, the future, I don't know, the future, the next generation. I'm trying to think of the perfect word to encapsulate sort of the next step for the Blues. It really felt like a rejuvenation.
Exactly.
It really felt... There were obviously new names each year back when the Blues were chopping and changing all the time, but they weren't exactly young, up-and-coming players that just jumped out as you as future stars, whereas this Blues side last year, and majority of them will be back this year, really feels like a team that could play for the Blues for the next 10 years.
Absolutely, and that's shown us. Freddie Fittler is not afraid to pick someone when we don't exactly expect it. No one expected him to throw Nathan Cleary in. Everyone thought he might have gone with Adam Reynolds, perhaps. There was a couple other options there. But yeah, so, him mentioning Campbell Graham's name, guys, don't dismiss it, because Freddie's shown us last year he will select players on form. And if Graham is the in-form winger, which he appears to be at this stage of the season, he will be there. All that aside, I'm not the New South Wales Blues coach, but I would go with Kotrick. I think he offers a little bit more early in your sets, and he's just error-free. You rarely see him commit an error. He has the least amount of errors of those 3. He's young, and as we touched on, probably the most important point for me, he's been a part of this winning team and the culture they're looking to build, which is obviously huge for Freddie and the Origin team moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. So you are going with Kotrick for who you believe should fill in for Tommy Turbo. Who do you think, out of those 3 names, Freddie is most likely to go with? Who do you think he will?
I think we need to wait a little bit closer because, as we saw last year, he does pick primarily on form. He doesn't care if you've got 10 Origin caps. He'll pick on form. So I think we really need to wait. And I think out of those 3, we'd probably be guessing if we were to name one now. It is so tough because I keep saying he picks on form. And I did start it off by saying Ferguson's the form winger. And that's not false, but I just can't overstate, I think, how important it is that he has been a part of the Blues before and he didn't get the win. And he was a part of that sort of, I wouldn't say negative, but past Blues sort of culture, which Freddie's obviously wanted to come in with a clean slate and rewrite it. So,
yeah, and picking a lot of new players, like you referred to before, really helped enforce that new identity and culture. Because if he had, half the players that were playing Origin the past few years, they would be used to this old culture. It'd be harder to make them, commit to this new way that Freddie was. It'd be harder for them to adapt. So he's made it easier on himself by bringing in a lot of young players and a lot of young players that are really talented. So, we'll forget the Origin talk for now because it is still round 5. As he said, he's probably going to pick off form, and you can't really pick off form in round 5. So we move on to our second tackle. How to reduce late hits in the game. Now, this stems from, obviously, Tavita Pangai Jr.'s late hit on Cooper Cronk, which I believe he's gotten a 2-week suspension for. Now, in an article that you did, this is where this question sort of stems from for me. James Maloney had his little say on this issue. So, what do you believe? We've obviously heard Maloney have his say. He's a bit fired up about it. Yeah. How do we reduce late hits in the game? And I'm not saying get rid of them entirely, because sometimes players can't help it. They obviously have momentum and they just can't stop hitting someone a bit late. So how do we sort of reduce late hits and stop these sort of, stop them from being as brutal, I guess you could say, as they have been.
Yeah, I want to start it off by the top by saying I absolutely agree. There's instances where you can't pull out. Tavita Pengai's hit on Cooper Cronk was frustration. The Broncos couldn't find their groove, and that was him. I guess, people have tried to say, I believe Denning Kemp said this was Tavita Pengai Jr. saying, if you're going to take it to the line, I'm going to pressure you and be there all game. I disagree. I think that was just a pure, I'm frustrated. My team can't get anything going. I'm going to smash this guy.
Yeah,
I think it was just a bit of a brain snap for Pengai Jr. I got some quotes here. So when Maloney was speaking on that, he said, ones in the back are horrible. I think if you go at the line and you see it coming, then no halfback's ever going to whinge about that hit. But that wasn't going to the line. He had his back turned, and it's a bad thing. It's not a good feeling. That's why they got rid of the shoulder charge, because they couldn't distinguish head on. They said regardless whether it contacts the head or not, it establishes a whiplash effect. If that's the reasoning you outlaw a shoulder charge, then this is probably the same. If not, it's worse. So Maloney wants it likened to a shoulder charge because of the whiplash effects. That's obviously part of the reason why they outlawed the shoulder charge. But I think the first step before we look any further is there needs to be harsher penalties on players that are charged with dangerous late contact. I think that's the place to start, and the focus needs to be in the match review committee. Because on field, obviously the referees are looking at 100 things. I understand there's 4 referees on the field, but when there's a backline occurring, 9 times out of 10 they will see the late hit. They might not see the severity of the late hit. It's the same as kickers and late hit on the kickers. 100%. You need to pressure the kicker. You need to pressure the playmaker. It's a part of rugby league. You want to disrupt their thought pattern and make them rush their decision so they can't get the play off as cleanly as they would like. But it's when you approach it recklessly that it becomes dangerous. And we don't want this to get to a case like the shoulder charge where Greg Inglis damn near killed Dean Young. And then the NRL goes, oh, okay, we might need to outlaw this. We don't want it to get to that stage at all. I think the place to start is the match review committee, and they really need to assess it and put in some parameters and direct, laws. It is hard because everything is case to case, but they do need to have something written down in solid for every club, distributed to each club to show their players. These are the new penalties surrounding late dangerous contact. If you are charged, you're looking at 2 weeks minimum straight away. I'll just finish by saying poor Cooper Cronk. Last year, 2018 semi-final, Sam Burgess hits him late. He breaks his scapula, has to play the grand final screwed. Now it's more dangerous late contact on him. Him and Jonathan Thurston have probably copped the worst of their careers watching. I used to always feel so sad watching JT just get creamed.
I believe it was, sorry to interject, just on JT, I believe it was early 2015, I believe a game against Newcastle. And there was a bit of talk, just a rumour that Newcastle had actually planned to go out there and try to smash JT.
Bo Scott, because they used to do the same in Origin.
Exactly. Yeah, and I believe as well that during that game, it just looked like there was obviously the Bo Scott incident. It looked like that. It just seemed like the Knights kept targeting Jonathan Thurston. So
it happens at all levels. So I remember when I was playing under 16s, Narang's halfback was Josh Ralph. He now plays Queensland Cup for, I think, the not Balmain Tigers, the Southeast Tigers, one of the Q Cup teams. I'm not sure, sorry. And our coach was telling us, just make sure you smash him. It doesn't matter if it's late. Make sure you smash him. And one of our centres full did smash him proper late. And a bit of a scuffle broke out. And I was like real hesitant, like, oh shit, should I get in this or not? And then you're not going to believe who I saw coming in, Oz.
Who came in?
Big Keegan Hipgrave. I've never made a decision faster in my life. I backed down. I got out of that one. I came in with the old passive. Stop, boys, stop it. Trying to split it up because I definitely didn't want that freaking brute of a human. Yeah. So it happens at all levels. It always has happened at all levels, but I think it's time for a change.
Well, it is sort of a smart move. Obviously, I don't condone it, and it is a smart move in the sense where, especially a team like the Cowboys with Jonathan Thurston, early in the game, if you take out Jonathan Thurston, injure him, get him off the field, sure, you sacrifice probably one player getting on report and getting suspended for a couple of weeks, but for the rest of that game, the Cowboys are screwed in the sense that their key man, their key playmaker is off. They didn't plan for this. They're thrown off their game. That's the main reason to do it, to throw the team off their game because of this one central figure. So as I said, it is a bit smart, but we do need to start. It's hard to outlaw this because, and I think you're right in the sense where you're talking about the match review committee really needing to be integral as a part of this. Now, this is sort of going against James Maloney's argument a bit. A shoulder charge, you can outlaw that. You can penalise against that straight away because generally a shoulder charge, it's deliberate. You can see the player going in with their shoulder. With a late hit, sometimes straight away, obviously you can see in replays later or what, sometimes it's hard to see whether someone's momentum has just, taken out the player or if they've legitimately gone, all right, I'm going to stop. He's passed the ball. I'm just going to smash him. So it's important that we do bring in the match review committee, to look at it later and then make a decision. So and it's hard to penalise it straight away. That's the hard thing because
there's so many factors that a referee's considering at the spot, whereas match review committee, they don't really have an excuse. They've got hours to review it, look at the angle, look at the time, look at the playmaker's body. Leave when the pass left the hands, look at the defender and see, did he have his head down? Was his intention to always make that tackle? Or in Tavita Pangai Jr.'s case, this is my opinion, Cronk threw the ball and then he sped up into it.
Yeah.
But that's my take on that situation.
Yeah. But you've really got to look at all those aspects and you can't do that in the middle of the game. But the thing, looking at the other side, I'd hate to one day see... let's just say it's a grand final, golden point. I don't know, it's locked at 20 all. The defensive side, halfback passes the ball. Momentum has just carried this guy into the tackle. He was going to make the tackle anyway, but he gets penalised for a late hit, kicks a penalty goal, and the team loses the grand final because of a bit of momentum going into it.
We have seen that. Was it James Graham on Adam Reynolds? He had his head down and was just going for the tackle. He wasn't looking at all.
2014?
It could have been, but I just remember he barreled straight into him, took out his legs, so that's a penalty.
Oh no, it was 2015 after the grand final, wasn't it?
And Clemmer exploded at the referee and
well, but imagine seeing that in such an important game like a grand final, which which is probably why we shouldn't be too harsh on late contact.
You know what it comes back to
in total?
Something we spoke about on one of the other podcasts a while ago. 5-minute sin bin. Late contact, referee doesn't have time to decide. Mate, you've hit him late, go off for 5. Think about it.
Yeah.
And that way, there's not too much controversy on either side because you have punished the other team, but you haven't, screwed them for an incorrect call and then vice versa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Would you still give a penalty in that situation where it's okay, you've hit him late?
I'd penalise it. Penalty? I'd penalise it and I'd sin bin the other player for 5 minutes. That way it gives the team that had the late contact on their playmaker, it should give them an attacking set or two in that 5 minutes to sort of even it.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of the time, we're just talking about what it could be. Most of the time, it's usually pretty obvious whether someone or it's just momentum, but there is some instances where it's a bit 50-50. Yeah. That's when we need to really bring in the match review committee. But we move on to our third tackle now. We head up to Red Hill in Broncos land. Should Darius Boyd be dropped? Now, this obviously stems from the Broncos-Roosters game the other night. A lot of people actually calling for Darius Boyd to be dropped, which is hard to believe for someone who has, played so long at a higher level. And he's the captain of a club. So do you personally believe that Darius Boyd should be dropped?
Paul Kent on Triple M Radio that day said step up or retire in regards to him and Greg Inglis. I think, look, if I was Darius Boyd and I was receiving $1 million, I would not retire. But there's no doubt Darius Boyd is not playing his best football anymore. What we have here is Wayne Bennett knew his time at Red Hill was going to come to a close in the next year or two. So he set up pretty much, he's like a son. Darius is like a son to Bennett. He set him up with $1 million payday for the next couple of years before he ditched. That's exactly what we're seeing here. I don't know whether the media are too scared to come out and say that or they haven't sort of caught on, or maybe I'm just completely incorrect. But for me, that's exactly what's happened here. Because Darius Boyd has not played good football for at least 2 or 3 years now. So much so, he didn't make the Origin side, so he had to cry and retire from Origin football after that. Billy Slater got injured after the first game. There was an opportunity for him to come back, so he burned his bridge. But to be fair, for him to be dropped whilst he's still, playing rugby league is ridiculous in itself, because he is the club captain. I understand he's going through a tough phase and not playing his best football. I don't think we'll ever see Darius Boyd back to his very best, but the influence that he has on that side, particularly at the back at fullback, we're talking, I think, around 250 games of experience, and whether you want to take this for gospel or not, because obviously they do have such a close connection, Wayne Bennett has said he's the best talker he's ever heard on a football field.
Yeah.
And my argument here would be, okay, I understand that, I cannot dismiss that because Bennett obviously loves him, whatever. Jermaine Asako should be the fullback. Well, his form hasn't been up to scratch. If Jermaine Asako had played good this first month of NRL, 100%, Anthony Seibold would be looking to make some serious changes there, but he won't. And because Seibold, his whole attack revolves around his spine rotating to one side of the football field. That is why Robert Jennings scored so many tries in 2018, because you had Damien Cook linking up with Johnston, linking up with Walker, Reynolds. You had your whole spine attacking on one side. And it's not ad-lib football that Seibold plays. He plays very much to a game plan. And that's why last year, the Rabbitohs had the exact same amount of wins and losses as the Broncos heading into round 5. But you know what, Oz? The Rabbitohs went on to win 12 of the next 13. Once they had sorted out that spine and that adjusted to the new play style that Anthony Seibold wants. And I think with Darius Boyd experience, and we know he has great playmaking, we've already seen Corey Oates score 5 tries, coincidentally down the same left wing that Robert Jennings once played on. It's just going to take another couple rounds for the Broncos' spine, especially Milford and Nikorima, to adjust to this play style. And you know what it is with the Broncos? Because they're such a popular team, who was it after round 3? It was Anthony Milford. It was Cody Nikorima. They suck. The experiment needs to end. Milford's a fullback. Nikorima needs to go back to the bench. Fast forward one round. Now it's Darius Boyd. And who was it after round 2? It was Andrew McCullough. He's a boring hooker who offers nothing out of attack. The whole spine is being attacked here, Oz, but they need time to adjust to Seibold's game plan. They have a good side, as the Rabbitohs had last year on paper. They do have the potential to get 12 from the next 13, like the Rabbitohs did in 2018. People just need to be patient, because we've seen this exact story play out last year.
Yeah, and look, spoiler alert, guys, Darius Boyd isn't getting dropped. I mean, he's just not easy. Like, you can't drop. You're dropping that experience. Look, in the most extreme case, if he did get dropped, I say it's a 1 week drop straight back up. Just to, if he's playing really bad, Anthony Seibold says, "Look, we're dropping you for a week. Think about how much you want to play in the NRL. Think about how much you miss it with that week in reserve grade." But I really don't see that happening. And because I'm some type of nut, and I think about this in a lot more of an expanded view than I should. It'd be really good for I'm sorry, I can't think off the top of my head who their feeder clubs are, but it'd be so good for Queens, for Q Cup, if he was to drop down for a couple of weeks. Brings me back to an example a couple of years ago. I think it was Matt Moylan and a couple of the other Panthers boys were out past curfew from a game against Melbourne. And the next week, Penrith are playing at the St. Mary's Stadium, which is about, 7,000. And Moylan was playing, and a couple of the other first graders. And I personally know, because I think my brother went to the game, and he said it was a pretty decent crowd for a New South Wales Cup game, because Moylan and that had been dropped for the week. As I said, I'm taking this way off topic, so I'm just saying it's sort of good. I guess there's a positive and a negative if he was to be dropped. Drop him for a week, maybe get a decent crowd to a Queensland Cup game, display some of the great players there. Only trouble would be, imagine if he got dropped for a week and then played terrible.
I just don't think you mess with you don't mess with your captain. You don't. At the end of the day.
As I said, I'm just thinking of in every possible direction think at the moment.
But if we put it in perspective to other club captains, think around the clubs. Jared Croker's not getting dropped. Jackson's not getting dropped. Cam Smith isn't getting dropped.
Nope.
Who have we got at Cowboys? It is Michael Morgan's not getting dropped.
No.
Luke Brooks isn't getting dropped. Nathan Cleary isn't getting dropped.
Is Cleary the captain?
He's part of that 5-man leader. It's Yo, Cleary, Tenny's Lesniak, someone else, and Tamo.
Yeah.
That system is just a failure. It failed at the Tigers, and it's failing now. The Panthers didn't have a try 1-7. None of their backs and halves had a try until 1 minute in the last game. Yeah. And that was just sort of an error and, quick, get the ball to the winger. Oh, the line's open. And
that was Dylan Edwards, who has been playing so terrible that at half time last week, he and Lesniak swapped positions. I feel sorry for him. He has got a big lapse in confidence. I was watching the Panthers versus the Dragons a couple of weeks ago in the New South Wales Cup, and that Caleb Akins for the Panthers actually looks really good. So I'd be worried if I was Dylan Edwards, because they may actually bring Akins up, even if they put Akins on the wing and place Lesniak at fullback. Akins looks good for me, so I think Dylan, speaking of dropping people,
I just think Ivan Cleary is a bad coach, because last week he came out and said, I'm standing by Edwards, I'm going to support him, he's going to be our fullback. And then 1 week later, you're shafting him to the ring. How much confidence does that give someone that's already low on confidence? You should have just spoken to him. You got the Titans this week, mate. I want simple footy from you. I just want you to try me into our back line. I want hard kick returns. I want you safe under the high ball. Just give him one game, to just get back to basics footy. And then once he gets through a whole game unscathed without his errors, his confidence will be back. Confidence is a funny thing in rugby league. It comes and goes.
Yeah, I know we're off on a bit of a tangent now about Dylan Edwards, which is personal play, because the effort and put in. But that effort against the Tigers just was not first grade quality. I mean, when he almost let a try, and I think it went to video ref and it was no try, when he dropped the ball back and then I was sitting with my dad and my brother like I do every game. They were giving it to him. They were saying, why is Edwards in the side? And at halftime, they're like, oh, look, he's so crap, they've moved him onto the wing, which I thought...
Panthers fans are savage, man.
I mean, a lot of fans are savage. I just sort of sit there in like the Panthers members every second week. They're all yelling. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I'm trying to watch a game of footy.
They love their ref bash, eh? They always bash their ref.
Yeah, over every little thing. Like, trust me, either side of me, my dad and my brother, I've got two of the biggest Panthers fans and two of the biggest ref bashers. But but at the end of each game, look, they end up saying, the Panthers were pretty crap, weren't they? But anyway, enough of that. Somehow we've got from Darius Boyd to Dylan Edwards confirmed. Darius Boyd and Dylan Edwards are doing a swap from the Broncos to the Panthers, confirmed right here on the Set of Six podcast. No, I'm just joking. On to our now. What are we up to?
Question 4, benchmark teams.
What was that question for? What the hell does that word even mean? I don't know what question means.
Benchmark teams. So pretty much, we're looking at either ends of the spectrum here, top and bottom. Are Storm the benchmark team you want to, mark yourself against for top of the ladder? And are Titans the mark where you mark yourself towards the bottom of the ladder? I've got yes for both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shit to say as a Titans fan. We'll start with the bad, but we are, the last couple of years, we've always consistently been around the bottom. We're not really a threat to teams, and you can almost argue teams don't always take us seriously. In 2017, when the Melbourne Storm won, they were beaten by two teams all year, the Parramatta Eels and us, at a doubleheader, Suncorp Stadium, because I won't forget that game. Conrad Hurrell got a ball out to... Anthony Don jumps up, bats it back to Conrad Hurrell. He burrows over. But I just think teams, they don't really switch on when they prepare for us. My evidence is one fortnight ago, the Bunnies let us back in the game because they just weren't taking us seriously. And then we were able to jump on the back of that and score some pretty good tries. But, that Rabbitohs outfit, when they're focused, which they hadn't been for a few weeks, really interesting on that, actually. I'm getting sidetracked again. Wayne Bennett said it at the post-game press conference, and when I was on League Lane with Dane with Tavita Totola, he said, I could feel it in the playing group. Like, we weren't focused, and we weren't, we just weren't focused around the week. So I thought that was really interesting. And for the Storm, I mean, how can they not be? Consistently for this whole last decade, they've been right up the top. They're the team you've gauged yourself off for. I would actually say, I'm not emphasizing that, the whole past decade, the Storm have been the team you gauge yourself off. And it's so weird because the Storm never let their guard down. When the Bulldogs almost beat them last week, it was a big deal because the Storm let their guard down. No one was saying, oh my God, the Canterbury Bulldogs, people were saying this, sorry, I take that back. Half the people were saying, oh, the Canterbury Bulldogs played great. And then the other half were saying, oh, the Storm were really disappointing. They didn't play good. So I think for that, there's my evidence within the last fortnight, but certainly dating back for the past decade, I'm sure statistics and results that I'm going to be honest, I could not be bothered researching would probably paint that picture.
Yeah, look, I guess I'll give my take now. The Titans, we have got the talent. They are just not playing well together. So at the moment, they are the benchmark, but it is hard to call a team the benchmark of failure in the NRL when basically your entire forward pack or the main elements that make up your forward pack are representative players or have played representative footy. Tyrone Peachey was coming off the bench for the Blues last year, has not had a good year. I think you might get to that a little bit later on.
J-Wall, Maroons, Peachey, Blues.
Yeah.
James, so close to the Blues.
I mean, Anthony Don has been one of our more consistent players on the wing, and they've just not, I guess, been the best getting the ball out to him, I guess you could say, for an example. I do want to commend a couple of players, like Anthony Don. I think Jair has been pretty good.
Is our entire forward pack bench or former bench... our entire... Oh my God, that was crazy. Our entire forward pack, are they rep players or former? J-Well, yes. Pete's, yes. James, super close. Kevin Proctor, yes. Jai Arrow, yes. Who's our other back row at the moment? It's escaping my mind. I need to check the draw.
So that one of your comments just caught me out there. Do you think Jared is done playing Origin?
No, he'll play again this year. But
you think he'll play? But
his form is down. He'll play purely because there's not too many front row options, and you need experienced football pack in thing. Bryce Cartwright's our other back row at the moment. He's been close. Shannon Boyd, former Australian rep on the bench. It's a great side.
It is a great side. It's a side that should be contending for the top 8 each year, which I've probably stupidly given them the opportunity to do.
Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Former New South Wales Blues, 250 games experience. Don, one of the most consistent wingers. Copley, former Brisbane Broncos top try scorer. Brian Kelly, arguably Manly's most dangerous weapon last year outside of Tom Trbojevic. Tyrone Peachey, New South Wales rep, crazy talent. Robertson Taylor, the halves that are the last to take us to a finals appearance. As we just touched on the whole forward pack, former or not, if not very close, or current rep stars. AJ Brimson, one of the hottest prospects. Moeki Fotuaika, one of the most hyped prospects coming through the game. He's 19 years old, I believe. Correction, he's 18 years old. The only other 18-year-old prop that's getting around at the moment is Payne Haas. Shannon Boyd, former Australian Kangaroo. Keegan Hipgrave, absolute hothead, but the aggression you need in a side. I just don't see how that side is, contending for the wooden spoon at this stage of the season. It's so frustrating, but I can't argue anything else but to say we are where teams gauge themselves against in terms of being towards the bottom spectrum of the ladder. Exactly.
And look, as I said, 3 individuals I just want to commend for playing good in a bad side. Jai Arrow has been pretty good, especially in that game against Cronulla, obviously. Our man, Flash Michael Gordon, he's not exactly doing amazing things each week, but he's consistent and he's looking well. As well, Anthony Don, obviously, has just broken the record for top try scorer as a Titan. And, he I know it's weird to say, but he's almost looking the best he has in his whole career. But that's the thing. These are 3 very good individual efforts. We need to start seeing a good team effort.
Absolutely.
It is very worrying for a team when their 2 starting halves go down with injuries very early in the season. And
don't get me wrong, I'm not prepared to write us off yet. I'm actually tipping us to bounce back. I'm actually tipping us to bounce back against Panthers.
I don't think we'll come last still. I did have them in the top 8. Bit of a spoiler, I guess, for my update after round 5 they're probably one of the teams that'll drop down. But yeah, teams, if they do lose their halves, obviously it affects. Right, we could still work something out. A team like the Roosters, a team like Melbourne would be able to do something like that. Obviously, we saw with the Roosters, they'd lost Cooper Cronk. They had a plan in place. Yep, let's bring up Lachie Lamb. Let's chuck Latrell into the halves. With the Titans, they just seemed a little lost, especially without those halves, which you can't be without missing 2 players. It is hard, but
we had options as well.
We did. Riley Jacks, Brimson,
and AJ.
Yeah,
the Roosters are spoiled though. Like, they lose Cronk, they can bring Latrell into 5'8". If they lose Keary, they can bring up Drew Hutchinson, Lachlan Lamb, or Brock Lamb.
Yeah, they got a lot of young prospects there, especially those last 3
100%.
that you name. So I'm probably going to move more towards Melbourne now because, look, we've had our say on the Titans. I definitely think they can bounce back. We've had some good individual efforts. They just need to play well as a team. And I think Garth Brennan really needs to hammer home to them what you were referring to before. No one, no team, no fan, except for our own, expects us to do anything. They don't necessarily expect us to come last, but they see the Titans and they go, yeah, that should be a win. And I guess fair enough to them up until this point. He needs to be hammering home to them. We have no pressure on us. There are no expectations. Let's go and prove everyone wrong. This can be... Imagine the Titans coming back and winning the premiership this year. It'll be like, if you watch your Premier League, Leicester City in the 2015-16 Cinderella story in the Premier League. They could be like that. And might I say as well, that the last time a Queensland team started 0-4 for the season, they went on to win the comp, and that was the North Queensland Cowboys in 2015. So, hey, just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
On to Melbourne quickly for me. They are the benchmark at the moment. They've got a great side. We thought that after the big 3 retired, obviously Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater and Cam Smith, that, they'd probably drop out of the top 8, not play well. But Melbourne are like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to have a big 3 anymore once they retire. We're actually going to have a big 4. Jerome Hughes, Brandon Smith, Cameron Munster, and probably Brodie Croft in there as well. So, Melbourne are probably going to make the finals for the next 15 years. They might not be as good, but, they've still got great young players coming through as well, especially Vunivalu and Adokar out there in the wings is just...
Too much strike power,
Yeah, just amazing. A lot of X factor in those 2 boys as well. So I don't think they'll be the benchmark for the whole year. They are at the moment. I think the Roosters will probably get over them probably midway through the year, maybe even Souths. So they are the benchmark at the moment. Don't think for the whole year. I think the Titans are the benchmark at the moment for poor form. It'll be a bit harder for them to rise up the ranks than it will for Melbourne to drop down. But I think halfway through the year, we're probably looking at 2 completely different sides. Now, on to our 5th tackle. We are talking about the Sydney Roosters and the Sydney Cricket Ground. Should the Roosters abandon the Sydney Cricket Ground and where should they go to? So, obviously, if you're talking about... we're basically talking about 3 different sports here. I think the NRL... have had bad games at the SCG recently. Definitely that Super Rugby game between the Waratahs and the Reds where they just churned up the turf. Yeah. And I think a couple of A-League games as well for Sydney FC. So, when across 3 different codes, they're all going, yeah, this stadium's not up to scratch, this playing surface, then it is a little bit worrying. So there are rumours that the Roosters will be planning on abandoning the Sydney Cricket Ground. Now, something interesting to me, there was a theory brought up, I think it was by Fox League. I would like to emphasise that this is only a theory. It is not a rumour. It is not something that they've heard, that the Roosters should move to North Sydney for the rest of the season, which I'm definitely not against. I know you were saying to me off camera, their feeder club, the North Sydney Bears, play there. Look, obviously the North Sydney supporters aren't going to support the Roosters, but they're going to be like, hey, for the first time in so many years, we have a first grade team playing in North Sydney every second week. Let's go watch them. So I definitely think, you should get decent crowds there. They're getting decent crowds anyway in the New South Wales Cup for the New South Wales Cup. I think they got 3,000 on the weekend, which, yes, it's obviously not much, but for a New South Wales Cup game, it's pretty decent, I'd say.
Yeah, that is.
So obviously the other option is ANZ Stadium, which I personally don't want to see. Yeah. I believe that if they do abandon the Sydney Cricket Ground, that is probably where they are going to end up if scheduling of games doesn't intertwine, which it might, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if all that's clear, I say they probably do go to ANZ, although it would probably be easier to go to North Sydney, like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
They would probably go to ANZ because they'd have the argument that it's the Roosters. They need to be playing at a big ground when they've not had the best crowds the past few years. I'm going to hand over to you. I'm sorry on about this. Give your take. Should the Roosters abandon the Sydney Cricket Ground, and if so, where to?
Okay, so you touched on the surface, and it's really interesting because I'm not sure if that's just the player's perspective, because we go back to Brookvale. Brett Morris, a Sydney Roosters player, said that ground is not up to scratch. I've just been injured on it. But then curators clear the surface, and it turns out that the surface is absolutely fine. So we sort of need to establish the parameters around what determines a good playing surface, and whether our players, quote unquote, are being sooks or there actually is an issue with the turf. Certainly, I probably lean towards there is some sort of issue there, given it's across 3 different codes. It's not just NRL we're talking about. Round 4, guys, they versed the Broncos. They had a crowd average of 9,300. However, we go back to round 1 against their arch rivals, the Rabbitohs. They had 24.5k. Obviously, being the season opener as well, it would have attracted a larger feat. So for
Friday
that,
night.
Yeah, for that reason, it's far too early to pull the pin just yet, because those two figures are vastly differing, and there's not enough evidence there to make a clear statement about crowd numbers. But the concerning part for the Roosters is, I would want at least three more games to gauge an average crowd, or 5 games. Let's get the average of 5 different games and see where we're at. Well, it's going to take up until round 14. They play their round 7, 8, and 14. So for that fact, I'm going to say no. It's probably too far into the season, too far into scheduling for stadiums, etc., for them to make the move. If they were to make the move to North Sydney, like you said, and I agree with that, I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. It will bring football back alive to the people of that area. Most of the Bears fans will definitely get down there. It needs to be done now, but there's just not enough evidence yet. Given, 9.3k is absolutely disgusting. That is a very poor crowd, given you just touched on a New South Wales Cup game had 1/3 of that. Yep. But then 24.5 is impressive. Yeah. So we need to collect more data, but by the time we do that, we'll run out of time. So I'm going to say they stay at the Sydney Cricket Ground and see out. I'm assuming they only inked a 1-year deal with the stadium, but I could be incorrect in that.
Could be 2, because I think Allianz won't be ready next year. So,
well, if it's a 2-year deal, man, I would definitely say they need to look at potentially their options the next year.
Yep.
And they should, they probably are given, it's 3 codes complaining here. And here we go, actually. I just Googled it then. That's why I was a little bit thing. The Sydney Roosters and the NRL are inspecting the player's surface at the moment.
Okay.
And then 23 hours ago, NRL and the Roosters give the SCG the all clear. Roosters and NRL have given the SCG the all clear after inspecting the turf on Tuesday. Officials from the club met with the stadium groundsman on Tuesday, and a number of independent tests were conducted. Here's a quote from Roosters CEO. Those results gave no one any concern over the playing surface. We've got no concerns, and neither have the NRL. So, I mean, if the turf's been cleared, they've only had 1 disappointing crowd out of 2 games. I would say they're going to stay, man. Yeah,
well, they probably will stay. And I think if the whole reason these rumours have come up and saying that they would possibly abandon the ground is probably not because of the crowds, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, probably would have been more so the playing surface.
It would have been the playing surface, because, I mean, Manly had some terrible crowds last year, and they could have been like, yep, so we're shutting up shop and we're moving to Allianz for the rest of the year. They could have, but, and I guess the fan in me wants to see North Sydney get first grade football.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because personally, I was born in 2000. I've never seen first grade football at North Sydney Oval before, and I'd love to see it. And especially because it was late last year. Obviously, I think a fair amount of you would have seen that I conducted an interview with the North Sydney CEO, and just talked about the possibility of North Sydney coming back into the NRL. And he said there's no set in stone reason for them to go back into the NRL. They're not actively trying to, but he said if I could ask North Sydney fans to do one thing, if they want their team as North Sydney back into the NRL, show up to games each week, apply for your memberships. And I tie this back in is because can you imagine if the Roosters were selling out North Sydney Oval each week and, half the crowd was showing up in North Sydney jerseys, holding up signs, bring back the Bears, whatever. Yeah. The Bears might not necessarily get back in, but they'd have the NRL's attention.
There'd certainly be some external pressure there on the NRL. And if relocation appears to be something the NRL's looking at as well as expansion, there's certainly nothing to say that the Bears couldn't come back. I understand they are a feeder to the Sydney Roosters. They would need to cut the ties there. But they've been a feeder to the South Sydney Rabbitohs for a couple of years before that. Yeah. They've sort of just fallen into that feeder sort of thing there. But
I believe this is their first year into a 5-year deal with the Roosters as well. So
okay, that definitely makes it difficult.
Yeah. So we do move on to our sixth and last tackle. We're running it on the last. We have best and worst signings so far in 2019. I'll just give mine first quickly. We have, for my best signing, Chanze Nickel-Klotstad. He's been amazing for the Raiders this year, and I believe it was your good old mate, Denon Kemp, put on the locker room today a bit of an appreciation post for Chanze Nickel-Klotstad with a couple of stats which I've taken from there. So far this year, he's got 22 tackle breaks. He's averaging 165.4 average running meters per game, and he's got 5 offloads to his name. Those are just a couple of stats that stood out to me. Definitely having a solid effort in Canberra so far. And look, obviously not the best player in the game, not the best stats in the game, but, comparing him to other new signings this year, he is looking really good.
Yeah.
So who have you got as your best signing? I believe it's from around that area as well.
Yeah, same club. I'm going to stick to the team just down the road from me. I've gone with John Bateman. Few stats. He's averaging 137 metres and 37 tackles per game, which is much more than Papali was averaging last year in the back row. It's also more than Elliott Whitehead was averaging last year in the back row. I just feel he's really helped tidy up the middle of that Raiders. And when the Raiders start winning the middle, it becomes easy for someone like Jack Whiten, who's still developing into a 5'8", to develop his running game. And we haven't really sat back and said Jack Whiten's struggling in the halves yet. I think that's because his forwards on the back of John Bateman are winning the middle for him and giving him that extra space and time to implement his running game. And then we look at someone like Sam Williams, who has such a great kicking game. He's constantly, in the last 10 minutes of last week, when it was getting a bit hairy, and against the Knights also, he was also able to consistently find the sideline. And that's sort of all stemming, I think, from John Bateman's inclusion in the side. Also they've got Ryan Sutton coming in. Yep. Elliott Whitehead's playing good footy. But everyone sort of thought the Raiders were going to struggle in the middle when Boyd and Paulo left. It's been the opposite. They've improved drastically. Other forward teams are too tired to get up and pressure Sam Williams. He's got plenty of time to pinpoint that kick to the sideline. And as I touched on, in attack, he's giving players like Chanze Nickel-Klotstad so much more space out the back. And he's really enabling his side, not just him, this is more of a general comment around the whole Canberra forward pack, but I do believe this all stems from Bateman's signing and inclusion. I just think he's overall made that team a lot better since joining them, and I certainly think their position on the ladder and the way they're playing it proves that. And to get off topic once again, this Sunday, 6:10, they take on the Parramatta Eels. Both teams are on the up. Both teams have a lot of confidence coming into that, and both teams, disregard, one team will leave with even more confidence. Oh. Damn it, I was really selling that well, like a UFC fight or something, and then I bungled it up.
I swear for each game, one of us needs to start doing promo videos.
Bro, I would love to, but the NRL will just shut that shit right down.
Because God knows the NRL doesn't hype up their own games unless it's the Broncos versus the Cowboys.
You know, I'm a huge UFC fan, and I gotta admit, part of the reason I love the UFC so much is because the promos. I watch the promos and all the interviews leading up to the game more so, or just as much as I'm looking forward to the fights. I'm looking forward to the pre-press conference. Yep. Imagine if the NRL, you know, after captain's run, they had a proper press conference. Where do you think they're weak, Ricky? Yeah, they're weak up the middle. We're gonna smash them with our forwards. That's where we're gonna win. Just a little bit of, not like huge trash talk, you know what I mean? Like, we still want respect in the sport, but stuff like that. Oh, man, it would just be so good. And then the night before, we got the NRL, Raiders versus Eels extended preview. Have your 2-minute version, your 2.5-minute quick one, and then an extended, 8 to 10-minute breakdown. The last time these teams met, it was a field goal that separated it, and it hasn't been any different the past 10 encounters. We're at GIO. And the Eels actually have a winning record here. So the Raiders' home ground advantage, you can scrap it. Stuff like that to just get you, I don't know, get you in the mood and be like, wow, I want to watch this game.
And it gets people to the game. We've got crowd attendance issues. It wouldn't hurt. That's like, if you're in the area, get to this game.
I don't know if you saw my promo of Gallen and Hopewadi. It certainly wasn't too professional, but it was borderline. It was like you could tell that I put effort into it, but it was amateurish.
Yeah.
But if I can do that with shitty 360 pixel random videos of Hopewadi punching onto the car park just about, if I can put that together, surely the NRL can hire someone and just, this is what we want. But they don't seem to have a very good mind for marketing and digital consuming.
God damn it. I want some WWE style video packages each week. And to digress it a bit more.
I got to jump in. I had the funniest thought. When I was a kid, I started watching WWE because Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio were having a match for Rey Mysterio.
Match for his son, for his kid.
I want to see Cam Smith's children on the line. The Broncos don't just want to beat the Storm. They want to take Cam Smith's kids. Hype me into this shit.
You get Vince McMahon's voiceover. Tonight, the Roosters versus the Storm. At WrestleMania.
Bro, fucking Victor Radley's just behind the goalpost with a steel chair, just waiting for him to come in, take him out.
Just take my money. I want to say that. Take my money, NRL, please.
Forget this charity boxing thing I came up with. Let's have a charity bloody rugby league WWE event. I'm here.
I guess to digress a bit more, it's, I guess, another reason why I love Andrew Voss so much as a commentator. I've said publicly before that he's my favourite commentator because, God damn it, during a game, he can take a game between the last and second last teams and make it feel like a grand final.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of commentators probably don't do that, where let's just say it is 15th versus 16th. They'll still commentate, give their thoughts. They won't hype the game up. Maybe they'll get a bit distracted, talk about something or whatever. But Andrew Voss is like, who's 15th and 16th at the moment? Obviously, Titans are 16th. Let's just say it's the Bulldogs versus the Titans. This is going to be a cracking game that we're seeing. And he's like, oh, look at the talent on show. Look at Lockie Lewis. Right? You know what I mean? During a game, especially, he makes it feel like a game you want to watch.
The Cowboys. Bulldogs are one above them.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Hang on, what's the question we're on again? Oh, best and worst signings. Okay, let's get off this whole hype thing for a minute. How the hell did we even get to that? God knows. Okay.
We got to Victor Radley on the post of the Steel. Yeah.
We got to the WWE. That's where we bloody got to.
I like it.
Yeah, shout out to Daniel Vito as well. I just want to say I saw his thing on Channel 9. All the best of luck to him over there, and hopefully we see him in a video package for WrestleMania pretty soon. Hopefully, giving a shout out to the NRL. Imagine that. I'm going to win at WrestleMania. Shout out to the NRL. I'd love that. Anyway, God damn it, we're getting off track. To our worst signings now, and we've both gone for a player from the same team again. Unfortunately, it's the Titans. I'm going with Riley Jacks now. Obviously, he was signed probably to play in Q Cup, but he is in the top 30, so he is a Titans player. Obviously, called in round 1 with Ash Taylor being out of the side. Played a couple of games after that, cementing himself in that squad with Tyrone Roberts being out. And look, his stats don't look bad. I had a quick look before we started filming, but it's one of those things where he's just definitely not looked good on the field. The stats don't really, unfortunately, in a negative way, give justice to how he's been playing. Look, your halves are supposed to be the integral part. You know, obviously, each role has its own, purpose.
Yep.
But the halves are the core. They're integral. I guess they start everything. They get the wheels turning. Riley Jacks has not seemed like that type of player this year, really.
Yeah.
And look, when Roberts and Ash Taylor get kicking again, full time, I don't see him even being on the bench, unfortunately. I think
I agree.
Unfortunately, is going to be stuck in that Q Cup. But, so far, he has played, I believe it's 3 games, and he has just not looked up to scratch. Not much more I can say on Riley Jacks.
Yeah, I don't mind what you said about Riley Jacks there, because he signed on a 1-year deal, and as you said, he had 2 games to sort of prove, hey, I'm a first grade player at this club. Don't just think because Tyrone Roberts and Ash Taylor are injured, don't think they're coming straight back into my team. But he really didn't do that. He didn't put his stamp on the match as a halfback at all. I've gone for Tyrone Peachy, guys. He's made 47 tackles. He's missed 17. That means, I think, if I'm good at maths, about 1 every 3 tackles that are coming down his side he's missed. That's very bad when you're a centre. He's only averaging 84 metres. Last year, he averaged 115 at the Panthers, and he was predominantly playing that bench role during that time, not an 80-minute role. I'm just not seeing enough effort out of him at the moment. I'm not seeing a player that wants to pull on that Titans jersey and do his best. When I think of Peachy at the Panthers, I thought of someone who was always dangerous, someone who was always popping up, wanted his hands on the footy, and wanted to try to create something from nothing. The Peachy I'm seeing at the Titans is someone who's content to sit on his centre. If the ball comes, okay. If it doesn't come, he doesn't seem too phased. And then if we go back to defense, guys, because obviously it's a game of 2 things. 47 tackles for 17 misses is, I would say, the worst ratio in the NRL at the moment. I don't think too many players would have that. And I know it's only been 4 games, but again, I would highlight 17 missed tackles in 4 games is also concerning. I would honestly say he's not far from being dropped if he continues that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've ended the podcast on a pretty sour note here, obviously talking about the worst signings so far, but you're right, Tyrone Peachy has not looked up to scratch so far this year, not living up to expectations. So to end things on a more uplifting note, we are ending the Set of 6 podcast here. Just want to plug something quickly. This Friday night, the Panthers versus the Titans will be competing in a ladder match for Rey Mysterio's son. Yes, Rey Mysterio's son will be suspended up the top of the Seabus Super Stadium. Vince McMahon will be the special guest referee. Don't miss it.
Yep, that's 100% factual, guys. And if you're not tuning in for that, make sure you are. And if you're not tuning in for the Set of 6 podcast next Wednesday, make sure you are. This is a weekly podcast, guys, where we touch on 6 of the largest talking points from the game for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, guys, whether you listened or watched it on video format. If you did watch video format on the Facebook or YouTube, make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you liked, didn't like, and tell us if we're dickheads. That's all I got. Have you got anything?
I'm done. Social media is up the top.
There we go. We'll see you next week.